Shock Monkey Radio is created by adults for entertainment purposes. The views and opinions expressed here do not reflect the sponsors or FXPG Public Radio. For additional information, refer to the U.S. Bill of Rights. Stand warned. All right. Sorry. The FBI is going to be listening to this next part. From Ruby Ridge to Ottawa to D.C. In August of 1992, a bunch of federal agencies surrounded the Weaver property in northern Idaho. The reason these federal agencies did this is because they had a warrant for Randy Weaver, the patriarch of the family, on federal gun charges. I understand that the Weaver family wanted to stay away from our society and government because most of us are jerks. However, I do believe that Randy Weaver was wrong to not show up to his summons to court. After all, Jesus said, "Render unto Caesar what is Caesar, render unto God what is God's." And no matter how isolationist you want to be, you are still subject to the laws of the land. The Weavers were in the wrong in that regard. So these federal agencies, the FBI, the ATF, and the U.S. Marshals, surrounded their property. They set up snipers, and all this took place over a little over a week in a quote-unquote standoff with the Weaver family. On August 21st, U.S. Marshals with military equipment were scouting the private property of the Weaver family. The Marshals threw rocks at or near their cabin to see if it would alert their family's dogs, which it did. The dogs alerted the family, and two young men followed their dog to investigate, hoping for game because that's how they lived out there. Instead, they found U.S. Marshals, and they watched as they shot their dog dead. Stryker was the name of their yellow lab that they killed. The 14-year-old son of Randy Weaver, Sammy, fired at the feds. After all, they just shot his dog, and that is a hostile act on the part of the feds. Kevin Harris, a friend of the family, also shot at the feds as the firefight ensued, which resulted in the death of a U.S. Marshal and Sammy, the 14-year-old boy. They shot him in the back as he was running away. The next day, I think it was, an FBI sniper shot and killed Randy's wife, Vicky. All this happened at the beginning of the standoff, and eventually the rest of the family surrendered, and Harris and Weaver were arrested. And history remembers the Weavers as being in the wrong, and sure, I agree that Randy Weaver should have showed up for court. But the feds were even more wrong for intentionally provoking the family or their dogs to force a confrontation. And due to the media's extensive coverage of this standoff, the feds probably felt like they couldn't let it look like that they lost the game under this kind of scrutiny of the media. In hindsight, there are plenty of other things that the feds could have done to apprehend Randy Weaver and not kill anyone they weren't looking for. They called this incident which is a violation of Americans' personal property rights, Ruby Ridge. Perhaps you heard of it. The next year, in 1993, feds around the area of Waco, Texas, had learned about a compound in Mount Carmel that had been getting deliveries of weapons and even grenades. They also learned that over the last few years, a weird guy named David Koresh had been building a cult around himself in order to serve his own perverse needs. He married multiple women within his quote mode church, and was apparently having sex with minors as well. David Koresh was a weird, perverted dude. Don't get me wrong. And I don't think that they should have had things like grenades or fully automatic rifles. And these are the reasons why feds ended up getting into another long standoff with these Branch Davidians, as they were called. Again, the media covered this extensively during the 51-day standoff with the feds and the Davidians. Again, the feds felt like they couldn't lose in front of the media, so they stormed the compound with effing tanks in order to save these, quote mode, poor children inside. This absolute debacle resulted in over 80 deaths, and the feds ended up looking like assholes anyway. This incident was called the Waco Siege. And you know how all these criminal deaths were paid for? With your tax dollars. You paid for this. In 1995, a couple of weirdos named Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols planted a bomb at a federal building in Oklahoma City, which killed 168 people, including 19 children. Timothy said that Ruby Ridge and Waco scared him of the federal government's overreach. McVeigh was actually at the Waco siege and saw it with his own eyes. Now listen close, because I don't want there to be any mistake. Ignoring a court summons is wrong. Buying illegal weapons is wrong. Having sex with minors is wrong. Blowing up a building is wrong. But the way the federal government and her agencies handled situations like Ruby Ridge and Waco is an even greater evil because lots of people died who didn't need to. And the failures of said federal agencies in some small way led to the radicalization of Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols. So when I see what I see coming out of Canada, when I read the news stories coming out of the tundra up there, I'm scared out of my mind because these are the results of a federal government that has grown too large. I know Canada is not like the US, but they have a similar federalist objective. Plus, there is a trucker convoy that's coming here in the US today. I think that's starting today. So when I see what's going on in Canada, I am worried about this kind of thing that will be coming to us for us soon because of these liberal federalist fascists that think they have the power to ignore civil rights and property rights of their constituents because, quote mode, the federal government can do no wrong. And the idea that some of my tax dollars went to buy the bullets that killed American citizens in Idaho or Texas makes me sick to my stomach. When the people fear the government, that is tyranny. When the government fears the people, that is liberty. Jefferson. I usually support the police, but I expect them to uphold their oaths to the Constitution and not follow illegal Gestapo orders. For God's sakes, if Reagan were president, we'd be smuggling weapons to truckers in Canada. Just thinking out loud.